Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I want to thank all of the artists who are attending this webinar. We have one more artist joining us from Wyoming. She's a journalist and she hopes she will be able to sign on at around 7:15, 7:20 with all the news that is going on around the world. More important than ever, it is we need to be able to talk to each other and to talk to each other about hard subjects such as race in America. And especially, I think, women being able to talk to each other. We have more in common across race than we sometimes think that we do. There are differences. There are things that women of color experience differently than women that are of European descent. But these are all issues of motherhood and family and career and abuse and just all of the categories that we tried to cover in this exhibition, to create dialogue, to hear the other side, to find commonality in what we are saying, and to hear the differences. This show was imagined a couple years ago. Time goes by so fast, by myself and the late Marie Summerwood. So part of putting the show up was to honor her. I procrastinated in the duo and getting things into ArtRage. We had talked to ArtRage about the idea and they were open, and I procrastinated. And then she passed away. And I just felt so strongly that this needs to happen. Her piece would have addressed beauty and all the intricacies of beauty as a white woman compared to beauty issues as Black women, which was covered in the show by Megan White, one of the artists that covered it. So she is here in spirit. Her presence is with us and blessing this conversation between all of us. Thank you.
Right, I'm gonna put up the images and we're gonna start with Megan White. Oh, I'm still on here.
Great, can you hear me?
We hear you, Megan.
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. So my name is Megan White. I am so honored to be part of this show and in such incredible company. Thank you so much for including me in my work. I usually work in fiber, and the last few years I've been doing a lot of costuming, cosplay, masks, headdresses as a form of expression. This particular series that I'm working on now has been very directly influenced by other artists, specifically Delphine Diallo and Cyrus Kabiru. If you have a chance to explore their work, please do. They're incredibly inspiring. But Hear No Evil, obviously is a play on, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, is directly inspired by the Crown Act, which is a legislative measure that has been adopted by a couple of states. It's not a federal measure. And it's really just to inform others that they should not discriminate based on someone's hair. So imagine living a life where you are discriminated against as a people because of the hair that naturally grows out of your scalp. And so I decided to try to do some work that was inspired directly by this. This piece was originally conceived as a triptych in which I constructed hair, masks, and objects as statements. So I constructed the gown, the crown, the mask, which I don't know if you can see here, is kind of made out of hair. The glasses, and originally the background was a field of colorful barrettes. So it was the backdrop of you know, what's coming out of your childhood, and just how you do or don't express yourself, and how you're being held back. Because I transferred it from being a triptych, I deconstructed the images into one piece, but I wanted to continue to emphasize on how that hair could be a burden and a blessing, and a juxtaposition against mainstream, of how even though our white sisters, white women have their own hair issues, you know, they're very different. And the commercialism, you know, that's shown in the backdrop of the picture. Also worked in some colors from the Black Liberation flag, the red and the green. Obviously the black is just about everything else in the middle. And if you notice, if you're looking at the piece, you can see where there are pencils that's in the hair. I don't know if anyone's aware, but up until I want to say probably the mid 90s in South Africa, there was a pencil test that would show, that was used to explore how colored one was, i.e. how acceptable one was. And so I worked that in there as well. If the pencil stood out very easily, you know, then you were more acceptable. If the pencil was firmly lodged in your hair, then obviously you were a person of color, and then, you know, less able to partake in everyday life as a person of color. And so you'll see those worked in there. But basically that's explaining the piece. Obviously that's me in the work. And I hope you enjoy it. And I do hope to be able to figure out how to continue these as not a grand scale as I originally had, so that I might be able to show it a little bit more. So thank you very much.
Who's next?
All right, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble jumping from one to the next on the images. So Kimberly Archer is next, and if someone else has the list available and wants to announce who is up next, that might be easier. While
I couldn't find it.
I can do that. I have the list. I'll do that.
Okay, great.
Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up. Oh, I can't see you. Ellen, thank you, or Megan, thank you for that. I did not know that about the pencils and the hair test. So that was already something that I learned. I've been kind of stressing out about how I'm going to approach this. So I had to write something down, and I hope you don't mind if I read it, but I am honored and pleased to be a part of this show. Everybody's work is extraordinary and really powerful. I'm not an exhibiting artist, so this is my first show. And I think that this piece took all my life experiences and skill set to make. I'm a teacher. I grew up in the university area in Syracuse with my siblings, attended Ed Smith, Levy, and Nottingham in the 70s. We grew up with a diverse group of friends, and you know, that's what we knew growing up. So sometimes I think more and more that we had like a unique experience growing up. But I taught at the elementary school for Syracuse City School District and taught in many different schools in all parts of the city. I love to teach different art forms and cultures to my students, so I had a real multicultural interest. I traveled widely and was able to bring firsthand experiences back to my students. I also volunteered for the Open Hand Puppet Theater and shared their mission of peace and inclusion. In my artist statement, I said that we share more than what separates us, and I stand by that statement. As I read everybody's bio, I looked for points of intersection, and I noted that we are all artists, we are all visual art educators, we are all travelers, we are authors, we have written and illustrated children's stories, and we are walking the walk and talking the talk. I was especially struck by the statement of being an evolving artist by Jacqueline Johnson, and evolving is an important concept in race relations. Creating a space where we can come together and share is important in moving us forward and learning from each other. So I'm very humbled and grateful to be here. Thank you, Vanessa. So I had to do my piece. Here's where I'm a teacher first, right? So I had to do my piece about a friendship of a African-American lady and I, Lisa Price, and we did a lot of traveling together. So this piece that I did is called Mirror Image of a Shared Experience. And Lisa and I, we traveled to Africa, and then we drove to Alaska, and we stayed in touch for years. But then, you know, she was in Seattle and raising her young children, and we just kind of naturally lost touch over the years. So when I was putting the show together, when I was putting my piece together, I was trying to think of what I wanted to, you know, show. And I wanted to show my friendship. So I have been thinking about Lisa, and I drew this from a photograph of a drawing of a photograph that I did of Lisa long ago. So that's where that comes from. And I have lost touch with Lisa. And so the fun part of the story is that, you know, I'd been really thinking about her a lot and thinking, geez, you know, I did this piece about her and I'm writing about her and, you know, our travels. And I'm like, I really need to reach out to her. You know, she's out in Seattle and I know the internet and stuff like that. And, you know, and as I'm contemplating this, I get an email from her. And don't you know, she said, Kim, I want to connect, you know. So we reconnected and had a 2-hour conversation on Zoom. And it's so great to have her back in my life. And so this show is, you know, really brought a lot of things together for me. So I just wanted to, that was my story about the show and about Lisa and who I am and where I'm coming from. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. It has been just so heartwarming. All of you, you know, chose to be a part of this show. So next up is Jacqueline May Johnson.
Okay.
Having a little trouble, but we are sisters. Let's see can we hear you? I know you're having trouble hearing us.
Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
See, I can't hear you and you can't hear me, and I have my phone and
Yeah.
everything else on. Can you hear me?
Hopefully she'll see
That's not
that.
better. No.
Megan, I can hear you.
Okay.
Or who am I talking? Ellen.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I hope it may cut off because I'm having internet issues and I have my phone and my laptop on. And this happens in this area of town. I'm pretty much, if you can hear me, I'm pretty much a mixed media artist, or I have ADHD art because I pretty much paint on everything and I just like to dab in a little bit in everything, and I'm not that much of worthy of what I do, but this piece was a piece that I did quite a while ago. One of my important parts is that I like to do has to deal with family. I like lots of colors. I like to work with fabric. I learned that from Vanessa, and she's given me quite a bit of fabric over the time. And I think I'm collecting as much as she's done. The thing that people look at my artwork when I have families and kids and faces are the eyes, and people can tell my pieces through my eyes. I remember one time this lady came downtown for the show that's downtown, and she said, I saw that piece on the news and I recognized those eyes and I just had to get it. So I was really excited about that. And right now I'm working on a lot of other different things as far as painting on glass and working on learning how to make quilts and make a little jewelry. So like I said, I have like ADHD art and I just like color, and I love to use a lot of African symbols because I believe that I could tell you the name of the piece, but there's a story behind each piece because of the symbols that I always add into a lot of my pieces. And I like a lot of color. And I just like to keep busy doing things and being creative. And I like to thank Vanessa for including me in this. My original piece is the piece that she wore. And I just needed to be special for her. And it was the jacket that I painted and added a lot of her, some of her stories and some of her poems and things that I thought that she could use when she goes and does her storytelling with kids. So I'm hoping that she enjoyed the coat that I made her. So thank you again, Vanessa and ArtRage, for including me in this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And yes, I love my coat. Oh my goodness.
Good.
And so I was honored to wear it during the
You're breaking
show
up again.
and to share it with the community, and we'll continue to share it. Next up is Kathy Arrington. And she's here to tell us about herself. We're so honored to have you, Kathy.
Oh, okay, here I am. Hi, yes, my name is Kathy Arrington. I'm from Owego, New York, and I specialize in mud cloth painting. Both there's two types that I work in. One's Corhogo, which is of the Ivory Coast, and then Bogalafini from Mali, and my interest is always, I'm a lover of earth science. My family, we come from a long line of earth scientists and sharecroppers, and so I've always been, so I've always been an outdoor person. And when I discovered,
I'm sorry, hold on one moment. Jackie, if you could turn your mic off, please. Thank you. Kim, you might be able to turn her mic off. There we go. Sorry about that, Kathy. Go ahead.
Good, I'm good. Okay, so yeah, so I've always been a lover of earth and soil. I've been a huge rock collector. So when I discovered mud cloth painting, I've always been a painter. I actually grew up as an oil painter and then switched to watercolor and pastels. But when I discovered mud cloth, I found that that was kind of my calling, because I love to be outdoors, and I'm a collector of soil samples anyways. And when I learned about the process, it just made me love it more, because it's funny, because it's one of the art forms that people think, when they think of mud cloth, people used to tell me, oh, it must be messy. And I said, it's actually one of the cleanest art mediums ever. I mean, better than oils and acrylics, because everything is just very washable. And so getting to that, the pieces that I did for this exhibit, my focus was on mother and child relations, because I grew up with very strong women. My mother was a very strong woman. She always made sure that we were, as a child, made sure that we knew that we were loved and wanted. And this is what this first piece is, with the mother and the child. And you see the mother holding the child, and the child just kind of, just cares, carefree, not a care in the world. And I believe that's something that, especially when a child's growing up, they need that kind of freedom and happiness as they're growing up. So, and it's mother's job to make sure that children are well-rounded and feel safe and protected. And the symbols that I use on the sides are it's a mixture of both Korhogo and Adinkra symbols. So it's basically to show the relationships of the mother and the child. And yes, and then the second one where the mother is holding up the torch, where she's to prepare her daughter for life. That was actually a reflection of my mom and my grandmother to prepare me for the world, which is interesting because it was actually for both. I've come from a small town. I didn't grow up around a lot of African Americans or Black Americans, and but I did have diversity. I went to a church where I had a lot. You grew up around a lot of Asian, a lot of Latinos, a lot of Native American, because I grew up going to powwows. My grandmother was a Cherokee of Cherokee descent, and so actually Chachalaji. I learned Cherokee before I ever learned any African languages, which is really interesting. And then my other grandmother's part Choctaw. So multiculturalism is a big part. And also because of my growing up, dealing with the earth and preparing for the world, it was always something that was really important. Like these symbols here, like the birds on the side are Korhogo symbols for freedom. And then the two paddles in the center are for strength. And that was the one thing my mother always made sure that I knew what to do when I went out in the world, how to conduct myself, how to make sure that I, protect myself emotionally, spiritually, so I would know how to navigate in the world, not just navigate through the white world, but also through I would say more like an urban Black world, because when I would go down and visit my family, which lived in a rural area, I had no problems, going, interacting, and when I'd go down to Georgia, I had no problems, going through the communities, and because everybody knew my family and they already knew where I was, but I never had any problem with that. But then when I went to college and I met urban Black young people, all of a sudden I was considered strange because I didn't speak like them, or they said I guess they just never met people like me. And also the kind of art that I did is also very earthy. I've always loved earthy work, and then that's why I like to use the mud cloth. And
we're gonna have to move on to the next person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we're gonna have more now. Pete, put your questions in the chat box or comments so we can hear more from Kathy. I have a few more questions. You think artists and friends, and then you hear them talking. You're like, what? I didn't know that. So I have a couple questions for Kathy too. All right, so we're going to move on to our next artist. Thank you, Kathy. Sorry to have to cut you off there. Sarah Perto.
I made 11 collages, and I've never made art ever before for an exhibit. But I've been working with Vanessa because we both do teen groups. So I'm calling this whole series Seeing the Long Line. And for me, that means people stretching back for generations who've been working for racial justice. I grew up Unitarian with an activist minister. When I heard about the lives of Ida B. Wells Barnett, Harriet Tubman, I wanted to be part of that line. And when I work with young people in Journey Camp that I've been doing for 30 years, I talk about honoring all the people who came before us who've worked for racial justice and joining that, making our own contributions. So I'm going to show you collages that have to do with restoring lost history. What we're seeing here goes back to the first Women's Anti-Slavery Convention. That was 1837, and it's just been pushed down. This is a time when Sarah Mapps Douglas, we see her on the left, and her mother Grace, they became close friends with Sarah and Angelina Grimke. They're all Quakers together. And their friendship, the four of them, helping to make this event happen. For me, it's like the flame of friendship is a revolutionary force severing the engine of white supremacy. We see an image at the bottom there on the left. I think that's an emblematic image of white supremacy. What we're looking at is Philadelphia Hall, a year later, and it was 3,000 women, Black and white together, were in there when all of a sudden men threw bricks. They were shaking the building. Angelina Grimke said to other white women, we have to make sure that our Black sisters are safe. So she organized everybody walking out arm in arm, Black and white together. So this collage for me, I really wanted to name racism as lethal and soul stealing. Let's go now to a panel that has 4 other collages. You're going to see that one on the top right, the stones. Dr. Lisa Brooks, who's Abenaki, said that the Sunsqua name is for women tribal leaders. This is a project of Sunsqua stones. I've been collecting as many names as I can find of women who were leaders of tribal nations. And I actually went to the Beavertail Mountain and carefully asked rocks if I could place on them the names of Sunsquaws. One of the things that Dr. Brooks says is that white colonists only wanted to deal with men when they were writing deeds. So this is an image of restoration of names. Consent was important for me, so I talked to a Nipmuc woman and a Wampanoag woman. They said it was respectful if I only worked with the names of women in history, but not contemporary Native leaders. In the notebook that goes along with all these collages, I go to the name of each of the women that's landed on those stones, and I want to give a chance to learn more about them. So each collage has a song, and the one for this was about Mashalisk. Mashalisk was the Sunsqua of the Pecumtuck land where I live. Then if you look below, that's bloodroot flowers that come up early spring. It's my garden with apple branches crisscrossing, an overlapping photo of Bridge for Unity. We're a dialogue group and we're half BIPOC, half European descent. On the far edge, I'm standing next to my good friend Paula Green. I have to say, she died this week. I was with her when she died. She led us in dialogue and in Bridge for Unity. She led dialogue in over 20 countries in the world. And she believed so much in it, so she would love this dialogue through art today. The top collage is my great-great-grandmother, who was completely part of this long line, Lucy Salisbury Doolittle. In closing, I want to say that doing this exhibit was inner work as well as outer work. I wrote an essay about these last 40 years of different experiences, leading workshops on anti-racism, and what it's like as a white person to become a trustworthy anti-racist. At times, I feel engulfed by my ignorance. At one low point, I met Ruby Sales, and she said, take another step each day on this journey. That's what you can do. Don't give up. Take another step on the anti-racism journey. Thank you so much It's just a real honor to be part of this exhibit.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And Sarah's from Massachusetts, so bringing that story forward. And from her area of the country, we live in Syracuse on the Haudenosaunee land. And so those connections to the Native Americans in all of our areas, especially the women Native American, that, this conversation is about us connecting and building bridges. Thank you, Sarah. And next up, let's see if she's here out of work, and there's not been any more news she's had to stay in late for, is Lauren Miller. Lauren, are you here?
Yeah, do you see me? Hello?
I do see you. Great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
And Lauren, would you like me to play the first 30 seconds of your video?
Yeah, that works. That sounds good.
I always was kind of just like
Can you hear it?
a tomboy growing up. It was always like a proving myself kind of thing too. I started like honestly viewing like the girly girl, quote unquote girly girl, as like the enemy. I was so self-conscious. I almost immediately didn't want to like have my hair curly like anymore because all
Okay, yeah, so this was I've never really done one of these before, so I'm not super sure what to say, but this was one of the films I worked on for a project about female anger and about the ways in which women, more importantly, what I realized what I wanted to talk about was the ways in which women minimize themselves to take on the emotional toll of others. And so I think the best way to talk about this is I wrote about this, and so I'll just read from that because I think that very clearly sort of explains what I was thinking. So the first story I did was of an elderly white woman. I did a film. I'm a photographer and a videographer, and who felt like she wasted her life and was unable to ever truly be herself or alive because she was just being too much. And so that kind of started and got the ball rolling. I'd been doing portraits beforehand, and that's how Vanessa and I connected, was through this project. And then it sort of morphed into film because I thought it was important to hear the women's voices. But then I made this mistake. So the one thing this project lacked was clarity and intent, the two most important things in art. I also personally lacked enough confidence in myself and in my own vision to say no to professors' suggestions. I was a senior at the time I was working on this. I so badly wanted to succeed, especially this being my capstone, that I took every response and every critique without a grain of salt. I lost myself in the process. So I interviewed a bunch of women about their lives and about their anger, these really intimate conversations, and I cut it and I recut it, trying to find this sort of cohesive story of womanhood. But obviously, as this exhibit shows, you can't just be, we all connect on being a woman, but there's so much more than just being a woman in our own intersection. So I started to think about doing it as maybe individual films. And I had 3 powerful stories from Black women about their experiences that were all different, but held parallels. So I decided to connect them into my next film. And Maddie was one of those 3 stories. She's a good friend of mine. At the same time, I was starting to seriously take stock of my own whiteness and thought this project could be a collaborative way to dig into that. But there it is, my own whiteness, me knowingly working with and using Black women to learn about my own whiteness. I was blinded by my own white fragility. I thought because I cared enough, because I put effort into educating myself personally, examining my own internalized white supremacy through education, and because I had the genuine intention of understanding that I would be able to tell a nuanced story, that I would be removing myself from the equation and just sort of uplifting the women's voices. But of course, art is just as much about the subject as it is about the creator. And it's so much more of a conversation than anything else. So I was so scared of getting it wrong that I didn't do it. Like I failed in the beginning. I didn't get it right. I didn't realize what I was doing. So when I showed the final film, the biggest critique I got, especially from people of color, was that it was these 3 different Black women's experiences, but through my white lens. And so an even bigger mistake. As soon as I heard that, I felt myself shrink. This idea of a good white person, a good white feminist, I thought I was, kind of came crashing down around me, and I let my shame and frustration eat me up. I basically sunk into my own white fragility, and I didn't touch the project for a while. So it was when Vanessa reached out about this, that, which again feels like I'm allowing Black women to bear the burden of my white shame and white fragility, that pulled me out of it and sort of started the conversation. So the piece now is more about that conversation. It was thinking about it and looking at what I had created and cutting it up and talking to my friend Maddie again, because when we were working together, I was like, does this look good for you? Is this good for you? Is this good for you? But I think I was too close to it. So she was being a good friend to me too and helping me out. And so I don't know, I wonder if I was too close for her to be truly honest to me about it. And instead of going in and being like, what do you think? I would go in and be like, here's my idea. Does that fit for you? So sort of thinking about the process and turning it on its head, and thinking about that as I went forward. And so this art piece is the video, but it's also this conversation where I then wrote this essay, which I believe is linked somewhere, about being the small, skinny white girl that she references in the video, and how we sort of navigate that relationship, her being Black and me being white, and that friendship as we both are growing into each other. And we have a lot of connections, but there's also that difference between us was our childhood. We both grew up in white suburbs, but obviously me being white in a white suburb is very different than being Black in a white suburb. I'm so grateful to Vanessa, because this project, okay, sorry, Rose, I'll finish in 1 second. This project allowed me to open that conversation up with Maddie, and for us to start to really talk about the ways in which I can be a better creator, and the ways in which I can be a better ally and friend, and also just to have a deeper understanding of each other and of the relationship through this project, and to sort of continue that conversation, to me bring this video to her and to be like, so here I wrote this, what do you think about this? And to continue it in that way. That was very jumbled, but hopefully it got some clarity. Yeah, I learned a lot from this process. More than anything else. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for being a part of this. I met Lauren through her contacting the Matilda Jocelyn Gage Foundation. And I was first a little leery about, why is this white, woman going to do stories about Black women's anger? But as we went through the process, it was very healing for me to talk things out because of my white suburban background. It was good to talk it out. So you'll see, if you attend in September and October of 22, I'm doing a show at the Community Folk Art Gallery, and Lauren's video piece will be a part of that show, the part that is me being interviewed. So exciting to partner with her again. So this is our next artist, Sue Murphy. And Sue, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, there I am. I should be on. Can you hear me?
We see you and hear you now. Thank you.
Good. Well, I'm Sue Murphy, and I'm very honored and very thankful that Vanessa and ArtRage invited me to be in this show. I'm mainly known for, and I mainly work in and show watercolors. That's what I've done most of my life. And recently, though, I say within the past 5 years, through some women artists in Buffalo, I also started doing collage. And I find that in the collages, for some reason, I can be more personal about my life, and I can make statements about, social values and things that I care about. And in this one, I chose to do a collage about single motherhood, which is very close to me because I was a single mom. And I've recently found out that it really fits with a lot of people, that in America, 25% of the children grow up in single family homes. And or single parent homes rather, and that a lot of the single parents are women, 75%. So it's a common experience for a lot of women. In my collage, what I tried to do is really kind of show some of the positive things that happened to me because of this experience in my life of being a single mom. I really was just so very lucky. I had so many very supportive people, and I tried to show this in the collage using bits and pieces. Like I have some pictures in there of people who helped me, family and friends. I have in one of my son's shirts is a cut up piece of a phone list of people in a non-denominational group that were very, very supportive of me. I have bits and pieces from a church envelope. I have in my hair, I use pieces from a one of those legal pads where I used to write down my thoughts. And I call this map of memories. And I use a map in the background too, because my family lived out of state, but they were still very supportive of me. And I really just, I hadn't really thought about this in a long time. I'm pretty old. I'm going to be 70 in the very near future. And I really hadn't thought about this part of my life in a long time. And looking back and really thinking about it, I really felt so much gratitude for all these different people who've helped me. And talking with friends my age who also were single moms, I think that's the thing now, looking back on our lives, that we really have. We have so much gratitude for the people who did help us raise our kids and help us, you know, in a lot of different ways. So that's pretty much, you know, all I have to say on this piece. And again, I really am just so honored to be among all these fabulous artists. And I'm learning so much from the artwork and from this artist talk. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Sue. I'm so happy that you were part of this show. This has just been awesome. Our next artist is a dear friend of mine, Caroline Tokes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We got you.
Now I need to do my video. Hello. I chose the assignment of making art about cultural appropriation because this is a big topic in my life and one that I've thought about a lot. And my relationship to it is really complicated, I think. I was raised to be appreciative of other cultures and to experience them as much as possible. Learn languages. I speak 5 languages. To you know, and I made this my profession. I became a cultural anthropologist. And for those of you who know, who aren't very familiar with what that is, it's a strange kind of science in which you immerse yourself in a particular community, cultural community, and try to figure out, you know, make a mental model of how it works in terms of social relationships and how it works in terms of cultural meanings and so on. So what anthropologists do is not, and then write about it, right? But what we write about is not the same thing as the culture we experienced. It's a mediated thing. It's something that the anthropologist has actually invented in response to culture exposure. So I'm also a person who, like many of you, have traveled widely in the world and have incorporated lots of different aspects of different cultures into my life. You know, I like to cook Korean food. I like to, I wear an African robe when I get out of the shower. You know, I have a lot of things with different cultural origins are a part of my life. And so I'm trying to think, you know, I tried to think about this as cultural appropriation. I've had a lot of conversations this year about that. Some people think that it's not cultural appropriation as long as you aren't trying to take credit for the culture yourself as somehow being your creation. But I'm not so sure it's that simple. This piece of art is a collage. It's a cloth collage. I started out as a quilter. I come from a long line of traditional quilters down south. And I started out as a quilter, and as my carpal tunnel got worse, quilting all these big things, I began to switch to collage work. So this is collaged cloth. And it depicts myself, that's me in the middle, a kind of grandiose vision of me, being nurtured by different cultural streams from various parts around the world. You can't see them very clearly, but the two at the top are the Arab world and Native America. The two on the sides are, on the left is in the image, is Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and on the right is Latin America. And the two lower ones are on the left is Asia, and the other one is Europe. These are all parts of the world that I've been influenced by and have, I feel, I've been enriched by exposure and by immersing myself in cultures like that and being very open to them. You notice the stance is open. It's embracing it all. So, but it's a very problematic kind of pose at the same time, because a lot of anthropology can be considered, appropriating the culture that it belongs to the people that you work with, and then making a career out of it for yourself, which is to me a kind of an unethical thing. And so I've always strived for more mutuality in my relationships in the field, but I ultimately left anthropology because I couldn't solve this. So this shows me my heart being nurtured because I experienced this as love, and what I give back to the world is the stuff spraying out of my head there, which is a processed, an aesthetically processed form of my response to all the cultural richness in the world. But I am a white woman, and I am very aware of my white privilege in having access to everywhere, having the resources to travel everywhere. So as I said, my relationship is complex with the subject. That's enough.
Thank you for being so vulnerable in sharing this. I think that is one of the things I've enjoyed about this experience from each of you artists, and talking with you as you were developing your pieces. People sent me essays. I had long conversations on the phone, emails, back and forth. The willingness for people to be vulnerable and to be challenged with their point of view of the world. Next is one of the quilt artists that I just respect so much in the world, and I consider her a mentor, Ellen Blaylock.
I believe I'm on now, but I don't see my face, but that's okay. Robin is a person, she will be on next. And I asked Robin if she was interested in doing this. And she was excited about it. But the discourse that we discovered we had was our perception on how we thought about the help. So this was our struggle to connect. So in the beginning, we started to talk about working together on one piece. And then we decided that we were running out of time, and also our pieces were kind of moving in a different direction in terms of how we wanted to approach that subject and more. Institutionalized racism runs so deeply that most liberal-minded people don't know that this national disease also flows through their veins. The American dream was never designed for the African American. MAGA, Make America Great Again, does not include African Americans. The good Negro had lived in its psyche as the help, nanny, maid, wet nurse, laundress, cook, driver, butler, doorman, shoe shine boy, and mother's helper, and whatever else to keep white folks happy and burden free. My grandfather, Oscar Carter, dreams did not include his daughters being the help. He did not want his girls playing with white dolls. He did not want to normalize the rearing of white babies into their psyches. So on top, you see the photo there, is my mother, Mrs. Blaylock to you. She is holding one of her grands or grandkids or great-granddaughters, that is. She loved boys, she really did, but girls were her favorite. So on the next level down, if you switch to the other slide, okay, you had that, yes. On the next level down is an African deity with precious gems inserted into its crown. The gems are 4 generations of girls in the family, including me. And on the bottom, an archetype, the wet nurse, human heifer, the place settler, a place setter, or the stunt mother to do the heavy lifting, spilling her blood into white babies. On the wet nurse skirt are pictures of other wet nurses, the mammy, and Shirley Temple in blackface. My mother once told me this story of when she was a little girl. And every Christmas, for just one day that year, the Shirley Temple doll was pulled out of the closet for the girls to play with. And I'm also remembering when I was a young girl, Mrs. Blaylock, my mother, would heat up the curling iron and give me Shirley Temple curls before I went to Sunday school. So today, my mother collects beautiful, beautiful grands, great grands, godchildren, and a few Black baby dolls. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And our next guest is Robin. And there was a question up about whether this art and this experience had answered the question of how do we connect between each other. And certainly pieces like Ellen's piece and Robin's piece, they talk to each other across the room. But each of the pieces in the show, each of them challenge us to look at our points of view. As single motherhood and Sue's experience, is that the same experience that many African-American women or other women of color experience as single mothers? Is there a commonality in that experience and that tough experience that Sue lived through? Is there ways we can join together in supporting each other in that experience? So here is Robin's piece. This is Robin.
Hello, can you see me?
We see and hear you.
Oh, you do? Okay. This piece is called Annabelle's Daughter, and it was created in conversation with Ellen. And it was not just a piece that was meaningful in so many ways, but it was a journey for me. And what Ellen and I decided to do was start from something intimate, our own experiences. So we picked the very charged subject matter of the maid and the helper. And you just heard Ellen's experience. And what I did was I kind of looked at my family and my background. And my mother grew up as a very poor girl in the Bronx. And she realized that her way out of poverty was education. So when it came time in her life, she did what, and she needed somebody to hire for help. She was very deliberate that she wanted to hire a mother's helper who was a college student, and who was somebody she could hire in the summer and not just work alongside of, but also help her in the process of going through college and validating her desire and her dreams. So Emma came in her freshman year in the summer, and in the middle of this piece, I look at my relationship with Emma, and it talks about that. And then it moves into my relationship, not just inside our house, but outside, the outside world, and my awareness of segregation and racism on the Jersey Shore when I grew up. And as I examined that, I began to question and follow my journey to the women's movement and the women's suffragette movement. And I wanted to really start to look at that because my awareness was so limited. So in doing that, I began to unbury what was so buried, which was all of the women involved in trying to raise the rights and the lives of women. And they were not white women, they were white women, they were women of color, and they were all working, and men, and they were all working to be just and to elevate us. And so one of the things that I learned in this was that there's a real history and it's a buried history. And what I tried to do was to create and to visualize who just some of these people are. This is not by no means all of the people. This is just some of the people that brought us to a much higher level in terms of our ability to be equal, our ability to vote, and our ability to get some sort of justice in our life. And so Ellen and I decided we were going to do a totem, and the totem kind of rises up. And in the rising, what I began to do is to go up, look at the sheer violence and brutality of racism and patriarchy. And I also looked at the way it is either blatant, as we saw in the insurgents to the Capitol, or it is covered with this light veil, this lace of pearls and lace that tries to make it look like it's somehow acceptable. So we go up to this final image, and that is my female power symbol. And I try to include them in all of my sculptures. And this is the power symbol of flame and eternity. And it brings light and fire to our life. In this power symbol, what I'm trying to do, what I really feel is important is I want to honor the women who were violently killed without a voice. I want to honor the women from our past and our present who fought tenaciously to get us to a better place. And I also want to say that she, like many of us, is aware that this journey that we face is long, grueling, and brutal, but it is a journey that must be done and can't be stopped.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you. And as Rose and Kim said, it is important to if you have a chance to come into the gallery, wear your mask to feel safe. They have wonderful ventilation and air purifiers in the building, and they're open during the daytime, so check hours and stuff so you can come. But this is certainly a piece that you want to see and be able to examine the whole thing. It's amazing. So I guess I'm up next. And this is a piece called The Game. I grew up like Kathy Arrington. I grew up in a white suburb of Camillus, New York. And this was in the 60s. And so I was rarely called my name. The first couple of years in school, I was called the N-word, and I was spit on and pins stuck on me, and just all kinds of horrible incidences that would take place. You know, we want to call things microaggressions. I think that makes people feel comfortable about these ugly things that happen that are racist. But there was nothing micro about it. And I continue to write about it and talk about it because people act like the 60s is over. Well, I'm a child of the 60s, and it's still a part of me. And not only that, when you go into these white suburban school districts around Syracuse, a lot of this stuff is still happening. For me, there was very little protection from teachers, from white teachers. And I think often that felt like they didn't want to be there. They didn't want us there either. And at one point, it was just me and my brother who were in the Stonehenge Elementary School. Another Black family that was there when we got there moved back to the city. So in this piece, there's a text that I've written out. This is one of my long kind of scroll pieces that talks about, you know, an incident in 5th grade where we were in two of the white girls in my school, Patty Shader and Patty, I'm not remembering one Patty's name, but one was Patty Sill, and we're still friends. And we, they decided to take me on as a friend that in 5th grade, and they would walk on either side of me, and we'd go places together, or if we were in classes, they would sit next to me. I was in Girl Scouts with one of them, and they were the most popular girls. They had the blonde hair and the bowl cuts at the time. They kind of looked like sisters, and blue eyes, but they were the popular girls. So them taking me under wing helped deflect a lot of the name calling, and they would stand up for me too. Not that I didn't stand up for myself, but it created that kind of circle of safety. And we were in chorus one day, and of course, when the teacher left the room, one girl turned around and called me the N-word, and the Patties jumped down their throat and said, well, you know, we won't be your friend anymore, and you can't come to our parties anymore. And the girl was crying. And of course, the teacher came in and of course didn't notice the drama somehow. But when we started singing again, one of the Patties, and I don't remember which one, leaned over and whispered in my ear, I'm so sorry she called you the N-word. If only you were white. If only you were white, as if that would change things. And so as I grew up, and I have another friend from high school, amazing woman. You know, it's hard to find people sometimes where you feel don't have a shadow of racism, but I do feel that way about her. But I think there was what we discovered in our adulthood. There was a disconnect, a sleepiness about her, of not noticing that my life, often standing right next to her in the same room, in the same situation, would be very, very different than hers. And some of it was interpretation, and some of it was not, just being aware or knowing that she needed to be aware. And so this is what this piece is called, The Game, where we would play games kind of testing, okay, what was different in this situation? I have two other pieces in the show. One about Black women in beauty called Watermelon Girl, that stereotype. And this piece called Tar Baby, that speaks to, Tar Baby speaks to all of the abusiveness that is given to us as women by men and boys from preschool to adulthood relationships, and how they stick to us. How in the Tar Baby story and Black stories of the past, Tar Baby was to trap Bear Rabbit and get him to stick and to stay. And that is what's happened with all of these statements, all of these aggressions that we get in life. And often the sexual aggressions are colored by racism too. So you get this double whammy. And so that's what Tar Baby is about. So let's move on. I could talk forever, y'all know that. So let me move on to the next person. And that is, the phone is, there we go, is Mary Stanley.
Oh, hi, Vanessa. Thank you. As you can see from the art and the artists, this was a powerful experience, I think, on the part of all of us. And my pieces, and I have 2 works in this show, I think are intentionally designed to be provocative. So I'm going to read a little statement that I think puts them in a context and brings clarity, and then I'll talk briefly about each one. In my 2 exhibited works, I confront the historical tensions and estrangement between women of color and white women in the context of sexual desire. Think of contemporary heterosexual biracial couples now featured in popular streaming series. Is that enough to confront or transcend the cruel history of anti-miscegenation laws and white on Black rape? If you are listening and you are 55 years or older, you have lived in an America where interracial sexual relations and marriage were illegal in many states, and not just the South, including that between my beloved daughter-in-law, Jerry, and my son, Jason. And if you are old enough to have experienced Jim Crow and you know interracial sexual desire, even if not real, could get a Black man lynched. Given that legacy, does a woman of color who chooses a white man affirm her agency? Or should she challenge racism by selecting a partner within a race? Should a white woman choose a Black man, asserting biracial solidarity on both their parts? Or is that bond a subtle reminder that historically, white women set the standard for female beauty? Or does desire transcend any conscious consideration? And moving to the piece you're looking at, what about the love of 2 women, one of color, the other white? Is their relationship the ultimate example of women's struggle to connect across the racial divide? What are the costs and barriers to that connection and to all sexual relations that challenge historical tensions rooted in race, class, gender, and homophobia? But still, what are the joys that result from interracial desire? Multiracial and multi-ethnic children are perhaps the best hope for a just and empathetic human community. Like my 2 dear, funny, kind, lively, biracial grandsons. So the piece you're looking at, and I should note how I use chimeras. Chimeras, as you may know, are mixed species creatures, entities, living things that appear in folklore, myth, and poetry in almost every culture, including the West. We have the image of the satyr, the sort of goat body, human man. So this image of the uncanny, of the mythic and the poetic is evoked by, I think, the use of a chimera. And I often use chimera because I want to do that. I want to pull you into a story. So what is the story here? This story is of a white woman and a Black woman who have found the best half of themselves. It's the story of the two souls fused into one, the soulmate. And as you can see from the original sketches, that there's two heads on this body, on this one body that is fused. You can see that. But in the actual presentation of this work, I thought it was much more compelling to leave the white head and have the second head of what is clearly the woman of color, the female being of color, on a second pedestal. And if you look really carefully, you see that that second entity with the one arm severed is an image of a lynched person, a lynched beloved creature. So the title of this piece is Radical Empathy. In other words, the radical empathy of finding your soulmate, of crossing barriers, of heterosexuality, of race, but then who pays the ultimate price? And the ultimate price, clearly there is that imbalance between white and Black. So that is my first piece, and that's called Radical Empathy. The second piece that is in the show, and you're looking at it here, and as you can probably see, I'm also using chimeras here, a sort of the crow and human. And in this piece, it was evoked by an experience I had with beloved Vanessa and my sister when we were at Curated Beach and outside of Accra. And there was this meeting and I was kind of listening in, and it's called the last night of the NGO conference, Curated, outside Accra, Ghana. And there were all these young and beautiful, multiracial young people, all there doing the good work of the world. And I immediately thought of the Last Supper, of the idea of do this in memory of me. And that's the title. And here is this chimeric creature that has clearly crossed boundaries of empathy, even species boundaries, and is celebrating it in a positive way. Mix it up, do this in memory of me. And you have on one side a white woman who is looking kind of skeptical, and then an African woman who looks like, because she has these resplendent feathers, it might well be that her family has done this in memory, has engaged in this wonderful cross-border transgression that leads to beauty and joy. So then the question is, what are those two women thinking about each other? Are they sort of like appealing to each other? Are they trying to sort of say, hey, we're in this together? Or are they competitors for the desire of the crow, this beautiful African crow on one side? The African crows have, if you go to actually the gallery, you'll see this, there's this beautiful fluff of white. And so the African crow is maybe looking at these two female creatures, one perhaps a chimera, one fully human, and is he interested in either of them or none of them? So there's this element to it of desire, of re-engaging the possibilities of life, of crossing borders, of doing many things that might be seen as transgressive, but might also be our way out and a form
Thank you, Mary, so much. Thank you. And I enjoyed our time in Africa together. It was so fantastic. Our last artist is Laura Thorne, good friend of mine, and an amazing website designer, and she designed mine and maintains mine. This is Laura.
Hello, thanks Vanessa. Thank you everyone. I'm honored to just follow all these wonderful artists and all the thought and everything that everyone has put into their work. I agree with our host. If you want to see it live, it is so much more impactful. But the one thing I wanted to know about the whole thing is, you know, I met Vanessa when I first moved to Syracuse about 5 years ago, and I wouldn't say I wanted to be friends with her, but I loved her work. I loved her aura. And so 5 years later, I'm super honored to be in her trusted circle, to be invited here and to be invited to be a guest to the show. But as I'm listening to all the other artists talk, you know, the whole struggle to connect. I'm listening for things to connect on. Like Kathy was saying that she's very earthy. I have an environmental science background. I'm very earthy, and I also had Choctaw heritage. So, you know, there's things for us to connect on that we don't see on the surface if we don't have these conversations and learn more about each other. And, you know, Sarah, the quote that you said was, can't read my own handwriting. Being engulfed by your own ignorance. This first picture I have here in my self-portraits, you know, that's a little bit of what I was trying to get at is, you know, that first image is a little bit of, sometimes I just feel damned if I do, damned if I don't. I've had some real deep conversations with some women of color and people that I care deeply about. And sometimes I've thought, oof, maybe I shouldn't have said something, or maybe whatever. And a lot of times, you know, they've come back with like, I'm really glad we had this conversation. And I have really felt a struggle to connect in that moment. I've had these moments with Vanessa. So I decided after a long time of really struggling with what am I going to put into photography, because photography calls you to be very literal and you can be very abstract and then not really say anything. So I was looking for something in between. And then I started with, well, you know, I ended up going down, what's my opinion? And it's not about what my opinion is, it's about what I feel. And I also felt like what's my opinion is really telling other people how to feel. And I don't think that I have any right to tell any artist, no matter how your artwork came out here today or any other person, that your feelings or your experiences aren't real or valid, however they came out for you. So I struggled and struggled with this. And then, you know, really just in the final hour was like having a conversation with another friend. I am one of the persons who submitted something to Vanessa. I had talked to Black friends. I had talked to my biracial friend, couple friends. I have talked to my Black sister. I had talked to so many people trying to like pull out the ideas and what should I do? And then it was eventually like, just do you and what your experiences are, which Vanessa was telling me the whole time, just your experiences. So there's paired images. And these first two are really, the first one is how I feel when I do speak up is sometimes that I feel like sometimes no matter what I say, someone will take it as white privilege. Someone's going to take it as I'm careless because maybe I don't know a history the right way, or maybe I didn't know something. Somewhat, even right now, someone's going to possibly call me out for any number of these things, being ignorant, white privilege, or just being careless in the words that I'm choosing. But my other alternative is to stay silent. And that when we stay silent is when people get killed and people get hurt because we don't change anything. And when we look at like George Floyd and other cases, when people just stand by and don't say anything, then that's when we're in a worse case. So I feel like, you know, there's kind of the two extremes. I feel like I want to speak, but I'm scared to sometimes. And then I feel like, but I'm compelled to speak. I was compelled to do this show. I many times thought about telling Vanessa I can't do this. And then I was like, no, you're doing this no matter what it takes. So you can move on to the next two. These two were a little bit more about that. Somebody left a comment in the chat earlier about, you know, how is this about white experience versus Black experience? I did try to find another photographer. Originally Vanessa wanted this to be the call and response and we would work together. I struggled to find a woman of color who did photography who was interested in doing this, or even I felt compelled the way I did to be a part of it. So moved on with this, but this is the two extremes, not really extremes, but differences I feel in how I see myself and how I think women of color see me. So I love hip hop. I love Black culture. I love all kinds of, I love Africa. I love Ghana. I've been to Kenya. I love it. But I feel like I'm not allowed to own that. So I probably am not going to talk to a lot of people, especially right out the gate, about my love for Ice Cube. So how I think Black women might perceive me is as a princess. So the first image there is me. I'm not a princess. No way. I am a tom girl, not a princess at all. So that is me pulling off is that for me? My time's up already. The thing, and then the rest you'll have to see at the show.
Just quickly on that last image, just what was the last panels about, the last two photographs?
The last two were in reference to like white fragility and being defensive when people are trying to say that, you know, people tell you that you're a certain way. And like if Lauren had defended the way that she made those films about women of color and their anger, if she had tried to say, well, I did it because blah, blah, blah. You do feel like you want to do that sometimes. And maybe sometimes you do. I've been asked like, oh, you're a Trump supporter? I'm like, no, I'm not a Trump supporter just because I'm white. Then I'm going to pull up the glove. So that's why the glove is there. Like, no, I'm not MAGA, okay? That offends me as much as it offends you because they are anti-women. But the other one is my gratitude for taking those punches. I do feel like even with you, Vanessa, you tell me when I'm wrong, you know, so you're going to pop me in the face and say, hey, you need to do this the right way. And so, you know, you'll tell me all the time, well, where are the Black people involved in your project? You know, and then I've had that same circumstance with some other women of color, and I want to endure it. And I think we have to get through that wall to get to the trust. And then I just feel super grateful for our relationships and getting to things like this.
I love having you as a friend. And I have to say as a curator that there was a challenge in getting women of color to participate in the show on some levels. And some of the I put out 4 or 5 calls for this show, hoping to glean, you know, many voices, many women. And I think, you know, a lot of African Americans are tired of talking about race. You know, it's like it is not our burden to end racism in America. It is the job of white people to talk to white people about racism. It is not something we need to bear. Or as Ellen, even in that the picture that she has with the nursemaid, of being the nursemaid to white people to help them through their feelings about racism. And you had shared that you were one of the people that sent me an essay as you were trying to work out, what are my feelings? What do I feel about this? Because we are not often called upon to break it down. We know, okay, I'm not racist. I have friends of every color. You know, I'll say that to myself, you know, but where are my places of anger? That certainly the video with Lauren Miller really made me look at that. Where are my places of anger that we suppress all the time? You know, that, you know, we are all affected by racism all day, all the time, images coming at us, killings coming at us, even with this war in the Ukraine. And I've posted a couple of times on Facebook and nobody wants to touch it, you know, about they're not allowing Africans to get on trains and buses to get out of town. And knowing that Eastern Europe and Europe does not have the best, you know, it doesn't have the best track record of protecting people of color that are immigrants and refugees. And yet here's I am for Ukraine's battle, but at the same time, you know, where are the voices speaking about all these Myanmar and all these other places that are going on and wanting to rescue and not put their drink on the shelf and, you know, all of the things that people are reacting to, but we don't see that reaction if it's a country of color that is going through this. But that's, you know, Vanessa will say what she want to say. That's how I feel. So we have some other faces coming on board, and
so we're inviting all the artists to turn their cameras back on. And if people in the audience would like to ask a question, if you'd like to ask a question by audio, put your hand up if you can, and I will I'll let you turn your mic on. Or if you want to put a question in the Q&A, you can do that too, and I'll read those questions aloud.
And artists, if you want to talk to each other too, you're invited.
Vanessa, I want to, you know, for me, I still feel a lot of, you know, your story about what your friend said to you when you were young. I have a similar story of a little bit older, maybe just, you know, the next year. I was in 5th grade, he's in 6th grade. I don't know, a boy who said to me, "You're a pissant." And I cried. And I remember that moment probably the same way that you remember that moment someone said that to you. And I feel like women, we need to just be together because men are still, you know, all of us are still in that fight there. And that's from my experiences. And there are other women who don't believe that's true either. But that's, you know, one of the reasons I want all women of all colors to band together is because we need each other so much, because it's still a man's world.
very much.
I'll start off by reading a comment in the chat, and I think people are being shy, but I know Vanessa has some questions to ask everyone. So, but there's a comment that says, Vanessa, you are a magnet for magic. Your friends, their creativity you inspire and draw to you. Thank you, and all of you artists, to ArtRage for giving voice to this work, and to Vanessa for bringing it together. So I think that's great. So
I tell you that this has been I hope people recognize the bravery of all of these women in putting themselves out there. And some of the conversations, like Ellen talked about, she and Robin, and the conversation between them and developing their project. These are brave conversations because they're often unspoken conversations in American society.
Oh, we have a question in the, let's see. Oh, we have a couple questions coming in here. So let's do, Toby has a question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. This was fabulous. Thank you. Incredible. It's been a long time since I've seen you, Vanessa. I think the last time was at a Plowshares or something like that. But one of the things that you all resonated with me. But when you mentioned Tar Baby and some of the other things that are happening now in our like banning of books, people need to hear this stuff and need to hear about the racism that goes on in our, it's not teaching people to be racist. It's teaching them to have empathy and see how horrible we are to each other. And so just recently they banned a book about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. I don't know. It hurts my heart that this is what our world is doing, and seeing what you have done to put your voice into incredible pieces of art and to hear your stories. Just thank you. This has been incredible. So I really appreciate it. So if you could speak to some of what if anybody would like to, about some of that is going on currently in our world, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I feel, can you hear me, Vanessa? I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think you mentioned, Toby, the importance of empathy. And I realize that that is one of those things that seems just very abstract, like empathy, sympathy, all of that. And yet it is the work of the world. And I think, Vanessa, what you've done is you've created the possibility for empathy through everybody's stories. And I think the other thing that art can do is it can provoke people, annoy people, but in that being provocative and making you annoyed and pissed off, that it can also engage you as a fully human being. That person is another person, even though I'm really angry with them, but they're human. And that sense that we're human is what I think comes through in the art that we've just seen. And I want to thank you again, Vanessa, and Kim and Rose. Thank you.
And Kimberly Archer put in the chat that she has a question. Oh, you're on mute still.
You have to unmute, Kim.
Thank you. It's not the first time. Toby, I agree with you. I think, our world, it's very alarming to see us taking these steps back and people withdrawing and denying our history. And so that's very disturbing. But these kinds of conversations do help, and the artwork, everybody's artwork is just amazing. But Sarah, I wanted to ask you, Lysansuska is that like a healing woman in your piece? Is Sarah still with us?
Which?
There she is. I don't think I pronounced it right.
Oh, the sun squaw.
Yeah, the sun squaw. What is she a healer or like what's that title refer to?
Dr. Lisa Brooks explains that a woman who is a tribal leader, who's like Masha Lisk, she was the leader of 1,000 people, and her name would have been wiped out except for the deeds she was forced to sign. So Sun Squat is a generic, and also actually Masha Lisk is a generic. The place where I do the peace camp, it was the last Pakumtuk village. We know she was there. So every year we talk about her. And I wanted to say, and what Tubby was asking, Cornel West wrote in his book, Race Matters, about the permanence of racism. And Robin, when you said this is a journey that must be done and can't be stopped, it feels like part of this coming together of BIPOC women, European descent women, is trying to change that permanence, trying to shake it, so that's I just think about this stuff every day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot to say one thing. I did this one collage, just was asking questions of other white women, and here were two of them. One was, how do we transform the poison? And another is, doesn't it feel like white supremacy is a helmet put on our heads and we have to take it off?
And one of the things that I feel is the more we buy into patriarchy, the more we buy into the permanence of where we are. And the more that we realize possibilities as women and our power as women, whether we are white, women of color, no matter who we are, our possibilities are so strong. And we just need to pull together as best we can. We're not going to always do it. We're going to be at odds. We're going to be suspect, but we have to understand our power, and our power is infinite. And so as long as there has been racism, and as long as there has been this illness that has been pervasive in our world, is as long as we need to change it. And we can, and we will, if we just continue.
Well, one of the things that motivated me to move this forward was the last administration and the disturbing percentages of numbers of white women that voted for Mr. Trump. I have difficulty saying his name. 54% of white women that voted in that election voted for him. And it wasn't even just the racism, but his anti-womenism. And so the patriarchy exerting itself, feeling it was slipping away, the power was slipping away. And certainly one of the first places I saw was this, buckling down on white women's bodies and their lives and that kind of stuff. You control your women if you want to control your world. And so if you are being treated like that, certainly we're like laid at the very bottom of this, and Native Americans, as far as poverty, and are way at the bottom. So I think Robin's right in addressing the patriarchy. It's very dangerous. We seem to live in a country of these old white men that are in fear of losing a grip on things.
And the thing that I feel to piggyback on what you're saying, Vanessa, is we all know that we've been divided over the years in so many ways, but we are still women. And if we get to the core of who we are, we want to support each other. And if we can find a way of connecting, any way of connecting, we are so powerful. We are so much more powerful than we know. And we've been drinking the lemonade, and it's time for us to just unite and use our intellect and use our brilliance and use our power for what will really benefit all of society.
I was thinking I think that's why it's important that we share our stories and also show our diversity, not just, as women, but even different women of color, I know my experience is different than was it Megan and Ellen, even Vanessa, we have different backgrounds, we have different stories, and I think it's important that we share it with other people. I remember when I went to college, I think I started with Casanova. I think one thing I thought was really interesting is that people were telling me that, well, you're Black, but you're not Black. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Because I didn't live in the urban setting. I remember kids from the inner city thought, because I'm from the country that I must be soft, or I can't be tough, or I can't, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I'm just trying to be me. And, like it's funny, Laura was saying that, she likes Black culture, she likes hip hop. I'm not a hip hop person. I love jazz. Okay. I don't know. I always find it interesting. It's like when people know one part of Black culture, they think I know Black culture. Hip hop is not, it's a part of, Black culture, but it's not everything. I grew up, my mom taught me spirituals. My grandparents went to Tuskegee Institute. We used to go, I used to go to all these adventures down there, and what I loved about Tuskegee is that they always had all these poetry readings and the art, and then of course agriculture was a big part of down there. So I just it's funny because it's so different from what I see among urban, of some urban Black women, and so I think it's funny because I think from my experience of like what I've seen white women, it's like when they meet me, even the other day, this white mailman came in. We had the sign outside my office that said, please come in, and because we haven't had a regular mailman in a while, please come in and introduce yourself because we'd like to meet you, basically so we can exchange mail. He comes in, he goes, hey, like really like a stereotypical like urban thing. I'm like, my boss was looking at me like, what in the world is he doing? Because I guess he also was a Black face. I was like, I had no idea. And what he was talking about, and I remember having conversations with white people who they'll say things like, oh goodness, what was the one time I heard? It was some urban slang. I had no idea what they were talking about. And but they just assumed because I'm Black, I must know that, And so I don't know, I just think it's important that's why we have to share our stories, all the stories, not just, we can't pigeonhole, just like we can't pigeonhole white women,
I think it's important to recognize, there's not one monolithic, pattern to any one people. Why these conversations are important. P.E. Clark posted, art galleries are still considered privileged spaces that do not feel welcoming to many BIPOC folks. What is the value of this conversation among folks of kindred sensibilities? Who wants to feel that? Is there a value to this conversation amongst, gallery goers, artists, people that tune into this kind of space?
I absolutely think there is. I mean, if it's not an art ArtRage, where the hell is it? I mean, that's who they're speaking to. They're speaking to voices that are out there and voices that aren't heard. So one of the things that I see about ArtRage and that I see about Rose and Kim is there's nothing they want more than to reach out to every individual who might be walking the street and happening to pass by the gallery, which is look at life creatively and come in, you're included.
Well, I think there's a validity to Ms. Clark's statement there. Sometimes you do feel like you're, talking to the chorus that already knows the song. But I think you have to, for me, begin somewhere. And for me in this community, there is an assumption, because people are white and liberal and work for peace and justice and blah, 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 that they are unquestionable in being non-racist, being, that you can't question what they say. So when you start talking about things about, that challenge their viewpoint of who they are or how they have viewed their life as a white person, that's when you get the tears, you get the anger. How dare you challenge me? Of course I'm not a racist, blah, 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 blah. So I think there's a value in this. Certainly wherever you have these conversations, you're not going to include everybody. Everyone's not interested in all the same things, but I think the more we become comfortable with these conversations, the more we are compelled to take these conversations other places.
And is this person saying that they don't feel included at all, or is this person saying they don't like the conversation?
Well, if P.E. Clark wants to come on Voice, we can put them on Voice, but basically saying that this is a privileged space that is not going to, it's like it's like what I say about how my moment is in a space of time next to a white person who cannot see what, like with my friend where we were going shopping and I had one or two dresses to try on in a really fine dress store. And I was, the salesperson rushed to me and took me to the room to try on clothes. Looks, like nice. But my friend and her white friend, both of them white, had all of these dresses because it was playtime for them. I was the curious buyer. And the salesperson walked right by them to me, like I was going to take my little two dresses and run out the front door. And so, privilege, ArtRage, and I love ArtRage, that, but Vanessa going to say, ArtRage is only as acceptable to all people as those people feel that it's acceptable. You can say this is for everybody, but everyone may not feel like this is everyone. I was in a meeting when I worked in social services, and the agency that we were in proudly announced they were we are a gang-free zone. Like, come, everybody get up, go outside with me. They were tagged on their building. What do you mean this is a gang-free zone? The gang is not saying it's a gang-free zone. They have their tag on your building. So I think that's maybe some of what is being addressed in that. And she says, I am not saying that I don't feel included. It seems that these conversations happen in places. Where's the rest of it? Sorry, it's getting down to the end of it. Now I can't see it. Wait a minute. Okay, here we go. While the assumption is that all are welcome, there is a sense that all are not really included. And she's challenging that the space itself creates that kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anybody have observations. What do you think about that, Kim? Yourself as ArtRage, do you hear that and see that, or do you see that in a different way?
I think it's a constant constant challenge and struggle that is that there I guess part of our mission is to challenge preconceived notions about who is welcome in the art world. I think it's not just an issue of ArtRage, but it's an issue of the art world, I guess, in general. And I think that it's an ongoing process to become as inclusive as possible, and what that means. So I think it's something that we've certainly talked about, and we're always kind of looking ways to expand who does feel welcome. I think it's an important question.
And I raised my hand. Does that work?
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
I don't think any of us are so naive that we believe we're going to, end racism by, talking about it and making art about connecting and all of that. But the alternative is to say nothing about it. And that doesn't seem to me to be of any use at all. And if the conversation's going on in an art gallery, well, that's because that's where it can go on. There are not that many spaces where it can go on. But I don't think we're all thinking that it's going to change the world, not in a measurable short-term way, certainly.
No, it's the option. It's allowing for options and knowing that there's always going to be feelings. It's all feelings, and it's all our thought. I mean, you can feel like this isn't safe, and this isn't safe for very good reasons. But one of the parts of moving ahead is to move for both people of color and people who are white into places that don't feel safe and that don't feel comfortable. And I don't think that's going to end racism, but that's going to start the steps.
I think as long as we have the conversations and let people share their stories, it will at least give people the opportunity to hear them out and maybe understand a little more. I mean, I'm not saying that we can end racism, but the thing is, the more people connect, it's a struggle to connect with each other, the more people will have time to think about these experiences and reflect. And I think that's important, that they at least have time to take these ideas and take these experiences of other people and kind of marinate on it. I mean,
I agree, Kathy. And I also think that there's something you cannot negate. You see a bunch of old, powerful white men right now freaking out. They are freaking out. And there's a reason they're freaking out. Because they see something coming that we are trying to push. And that is, it's coming. We are pulling together. White and people of color are coming together and are saying, I don't give a shit about this. I don't want to be this anymore. And these are old white people of power who are losing their power. So if they're losing their power, there's power to be gained.
Mary, you have had your hand up a couple of times.
Been thinking as we've been talking about the value of art spaces, even if they don't appear to be accessible to the communities that we wish felt they were welcoming. And I'm thinking about how right now it's a pivotal moment, not just in art galleries in the art world, but in literature, in movies. It makes a difference who's behind the camera. If she's a woman, if she's an African American woman, if she's an Asian woman. So there is a sense in which you see the crumbling of this art world. It was primarily and only white. So I think that, you know, even though. Oh, I was just going to suggest an example of this that is extraordinary. Have any of you read The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fannin Jeffers? I raise that because I like to think that I'm, you know, old 60s hippie, that I've struggled with racism and, you know, my soul and trying to be more empathetic. And then I read this book and it's by an African American woman. And I said, oh my God, I missed so much. That woman now on the New York Times bestseller list, if you go online and see her, she is as real as you're going to get. And she just blows open the space. And I think, how could you do that if you didn't now have all this pressure to make space, to open space to women artists, to African-American artists? So I think, you know, that's working. Now, is it working to challenge, you know, patriarchy in its ultimate sense? I don't know. But I just say you learn through art and you never stop.
And I think, you know, with all the book banning that's going on and this idea, this, you know, unminding of America, that, you know, that science is not valid, that thinking is not valid. Certainly, when you are trying to destroy a society, destroy voices and stuff, artists and intellectuals are some of the first people that are attacked because of our ability to express our ideas in a very visual, very, you know, hearable form. But I think we also have to always, when we look at this relationship between Black women and white women, is question access to power. Because while people want to put down the patriarchy as white women, it is through the patriarchy that you get power that we as women of color do not have access to. And I remember saying that in a class, a women's class up at Syracuse University. And, you know, it was like I had dropped a bomb in the room, you know, because I think the question was, well, you know, well, white women and Black women were, you know, we're the same, we're in the same struggle. I'm like, yeah, but see, your grandpa, you have access to power and money and to that house and that inheritance and stuff through grandpa. We don't. You have access to those white men who are making the laws. Now, you may not like it all. You might have to, you know, kiss a little butt to get it, but you have access that we do not have.
Mm-hmm. That is true. That is true.
So Rosa said we have 5 minutes left. I'm going to check Q&A and make sure our guests are taken care of. You know, way back there was a question, was there validity in these kinds of conversations? And I believe that there is. Marie Summerwood and I believe that there was. That's why we wanted to put this together. Because I think there's just a lot of conversations we don't have. We're afraid of hurting each other's feelings. We're afraid of the anger that, sometimes I'm afraid of anger as an African American that I suppress every day, every moment of the day, because when I step outside the walls of my apartment, of my home, I know inevitably there's a 99.9% chance that something racist is going to happen to me. And the simple things in life become places of danger, driving in a car, getting out of that car, just being in the world is unsafe many times. But I think Caroline said it well, the worst thing is to not have these conversations, to not be brave enough to step up and to say who you are and what you feel and allow yourself to be questioned and challenged. And I think that that's what's been the bravest about each and every one of you in this show, Black and White, that you have allowed yourselves to be vulnerable. And I bless you all for that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I
want to thank
one thing, Vanessa, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for this show and everything you've done. And I also, you know, I can't, God, who am I? I can't tell you if our conversation is meaningful or not, but I can say that if they're burning books and they're trying to repress all this stuff, there must be some power in it.
Oh,
If
yes.
they're
Oh,
so
God, power
threatened
here.
by it, there must be
They're
power
scared.
in
They're
it.
scared.
And I
And
want to I want to thank we have got probably 2 more minutes. I'm sorry, Robin, but I want to thank Kim and I want to thank Rose for all of the work that they did. We have women from all over New York State and from out of the state that are part of this show. Let's just thank you for
Yes.
all of the hours a week. And I will be there after the 19th when the show closes to help you pick all of those black words off the wall again.
Yes, and as Vanessa just said, the show is up until the 19th. So if those in our audience, if you haven't seen it in person, please try to make it here. And if you are viewing from out of town, there is a virtual exhibition that has these images and more on our website that you can check out as well. And I think, yes, it's great that we were able to have all the artists here. Zoom does have some magic powers that we can bring us all together, even if we're not all able to be in the same room.
And thank you, audience, those who attended, for your questions, for your presence. Thank you very much. That gives us support and meaning to all of the hard work that the artists and the gallery put into this. Thank you so much for attending this Zoom tonight.
Thank you for having us. I really enjoyed it.
Loved all of you.
Yes, I'm so glad I got to meet everybody.
And some faces I haven't seen her. I hadn't seen Lauren in a long time. We've talked on the phone and I've texted her, but it was good. Jackie, I'm so glad you're here tonight. Megan from out of town, who used to run the Community Folk Art Gallery. Kathy from Owego, thanks for driving up. Ellen, I love you. I thank you so much for all that you do for the arts community. Caroline, that's my stand with me friend. And Sue Murphy, thank you so much. I am so honored that you're a part of this. Laura Thorne, you know I love you. It's just like a sister that I found, and supportive. Mary, my heart is with you and with her sister Louise was supposed to be a part of this and was not able to do it, and we just send our love to her. Sarah, who is like, every time I see her, we do Zooms together, I just have this smile this big. Robin, it has been an honor to meet you and that amazing piece of artwork. I've got to go back down. Every time you look at it, you find something new. And Kim, who is a part of the Griot Guides program that I do with the Community Folk Art Gallery right now, working with kids to write a book and to illustrate a book. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you, everyone.
thank you. Bye.
Night.
Night. Bye.